Hi, my name is Jenna Etzold, and I am a psychologist at CHI St. Alexius at the Archway Mental Health Clinic here in Bismarck, North Dakota. With our families, schools, and communities gearing up for another school year, there can be a wide range of response. Some children are feeling anxious, apprehensive, and fearful about returning back to the academic school year, while others may be feeling excited and eager to get back to school. This year's first day jitters seem to be taking on a whole new meaning in the context of the ongoing health pandemic. This is evident in the clinical setting. We're seeing a broad range of responses to not only the pandemic, but also the return to school. For those with a pre-existing mental health condition, we're noticing an increase in symptoms or perhaps an onset of new symptoms that those individuals have not previously experienced. But even those without a pre-existing mental health history are coming in endorsing symptoms most often consistent with anxiety and depression. Noting a frequent increase in headaches, sleep disturbances, difficulty concentrating and focusing on their daily activities, a decrease in motivation or interest in those activities, nervousness, upset stomach, or perhaps just a more irritable or low mood. Across the nation, we are seeing an uptick in stress, and this is no surprise given all the economic and financial stressors, the socio-political climate, the joblessness, homelessness, and isolation that are intersecting with this pandemic. We're also seeing a significant increase in the amount of substance use and domestic violence, all because of that stress. It's really important because of the stress that our community continues to have conversations about how we can adapt and more effectively cope with the ongoing pandemic. This is especially important as our students and academic communities gear up for another school year. Today, I want to focus on just a few ways that we might be able to more effectively respond to the current stressors. And my hope is that this just provides an opportunity for further dialogue within our homes and academic communities. Many individuals are just questioning, how do I cope with all the changes and uncertainties that are coming with returning to the school year and our children being back in the classroom? And this is a great question. One of the biggest culprits of stress impacting many of us is the uncertainty and unknowns that lie ahead. For most of us, fall brings about this familiarity that there's children standing on the corners of our neighborhood waiting for the school bus to come, or that we attend our local football team's Friday night game, or hearing our children practice their musical instrument as they gear up for the Autumn Fest parade. These are all events that can provide us a sense of comfort because we know they're coming. But when there's constant change and uncertainty, it can really leave us feeling anxious and questioning what we're in control of. One way to counteract the stress that comes from all this change and uncertainty is redirecting our attention and our focus to the present moment and what is in our control. So for example, if we're somebody that is anxious about coming in contact with COVID-19, it might be highlighting for our brain that I am exercising those best practices. I'm washing my hands. I'm wearing a mask. I'm social distancing. For our younger children, that might be something like allowing them more choice. So taking them to the store and allowing them to pick their favorite smelling hand sanitizer. Or allowing them to pick the fabric that their mask is going to be made out of for the school year. In our older children, it might be prompting them to really notice how they feel when they return to the academic setting for the first time and see their favorite teacher or walk through those familiar hallways. At home, it might be allowing them to pick a space in the home that's conducive to their learning style and helping them create a little bit of a home office space. In practicing these things, we're really allowing our brain to redirect from what school used to look like or what we wish it would look like, past and future focused thinking, and really bringing it back to the present moment and allowing our brains to highlight what is in our control. This not only reduces the amount of anxiety that we may be feeling, but it also provides an opportunity to connect to pleasant emotions that we want to be experiencing. Another question that many caregivers have is, how do I respond to the question my children ask of, when is this going to end? Unfortunately, when children ask about the course of this pandemic, we can't ensure that it's going to end in 2 months and that things are going to be back to normal. As caregivers, we often want to provide that sense of reassurance and security. As a parent myself, I often find myself wanting to eliminate those sources of stress and anxiety for my children. But in doing so, I prevent my children from being able to learn ways to cope with difficult and unwanted emotions. I know this sounds counterintuitive, and sometimes it can be even anxiety provoking as a parent to watch our children go through really difficult emotional experiences. But it's important to remember that children adapt to their surroundings and circumstances. They are learning to be resilient in doing so. Throughout this pandemic, we know that children's brains are already forming new neural pathways that are allowing them to more effectively cope and adapt to the ongoing stressors. One way that we can really assist our children in building this ability to manage difficult emotions is by helping facilitate conversations and communicating about what we're feeling. You know, our children may be feeling sad, scared, anxious, disappointed, angry. Those are all valid emotions, but they need a place to be able to dump those emotions. For younger children, we can facilitate these conversations by simply just noticing when our children might be feeling a little bit anxious. So if we notice in the mornings that they're preparing to go to school, they're a little bit more energetic or jumpy, we can simply just model what we feel within our own bodies when we're feeling that way. So perhaps as a parent or a caregiver saying, you know, I notice that every morning that you go to school, I kind of feel my stomach moving like there's butterflies inside. Does your body ever feel like that? That just gives them not only the language to be able to communicate back to you, but it opens that door so that they feel like they can trust you and have those conversations when they're ready. You'll be amazed at how intuitive your child is and how eager they are to share those emotions with you. For older children, you can take on a little bit more curious of a role, you know, perhaps asking them questions such as, how do you feel about going every other day to school? Or how are you feeling different now in comparison to 6 months ago? If they don't want to respond to those questions, and that might be true, that's okay. Again, you're opening the door. And you can also model for your older children healthy expression of emotion. Children, as they grow and develop, can start understanding more complex things. So as a caregiver, when you're older children, you might be able to say something like, you know, I'm noticing myself feeling really overwhelmed by all the change that's happening. And I'm starting to wonder, when is this pandemic going to end? And I just want you to know that even though I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'm doing the very best that I can to ensure that we have a safe and healthy start to this school year. This is how we provide our children with that reassurance. We remind them that just because I'm feeling overwhelmed or just because I'm feeling stressed does not mean that I'm not going to be there. Another question that can surface is, how can I help my child adjust and cope with the school year? Many caregivers in schools are very concerned about how the hybrid approach to academic instruction is going to impact academic success, not only short-term, but also long-term. And this is a valid concern. I don't want to simplify or minimize this concern. What I do want to do today is just try to take a different response to that concern. We know that stress has a huge impact on performance. And we know that in order for our children to perform academically, they need to be able to effectively manage their stress. Bottom line. I think in the past we've been so focused on academic performance and outcome-based measures that unfortunately, I think our children's emotional wellness has really kind of taken a back seat. This pandemic, I think, is really challenging us as caregivers and school communities to put our children's wholeness and well-being first and seeing if that academic performance can follow. So for caregivers, this might mean when our children come home from school, rather than the first question that we ask is, how much homework do you have tonight? It might be simply, how did the day go? How have you been feeling this week? Same with teachers. Rather than jumping on our children right when they walk into our classroom to say, take out your homework, what questions do you have? It might be simply asking our students to turn to a peer and say, how are you coping this week? Or how are you doing? Is there anything you need help with? I really do believe that if we put our children's emotional wellness first, the academic performance will follow. The last question I want to address today is, how can we improve our mental wellness during this challenging time? And I really do think this is my favorite question, because I think what it's getting at, or what it's asking, is how do we grow through this challenging time and emerge even stronger? As I previously mentioned, we adapt to stressful situations. And in the process, we build what we often refer to as resiliency. Resiliency is this idea that we can bounce back from difficult and challenging situations. Resiliency is not something that we're born with or is innate within us. It is something that we build and we strengthen. Resiliency is something that we can cultivate. And today I want to talk to you about 3 ways that we can do that. The first is connection. If it's anything that this pandemic has taught us, it's that connection is important. And there are so many barriers to being able to do that right now. But it is important not only for us as caregivers, but also for children to know that they're not alone, and to find sources of support that are healthy, that can give us not only compassion and encouragement, but also validation that what we're going through is okay. Finding ways to do this can be a little bit tricky. We are noticing within the clinical setting an increase in children finding opportunities to connect with other peers or others, sometimes in not the most healthy or safe ways, because there is such a barrier to them doing so in healthier ways. So it's really important for us as parents to, one, be really aware of where our children are spending their time, especially when they're on social media or technology, but also maybe prompting them to think of ways that they can create connection, whether it's they want to FaceTime their best friend, or have a social distancing party in your backyard and you being the host to that. Perhaps them FaceTiming with their favorite grandparent or aunt or uncle. These are all ways that we can help facilitate that connection. Another way that we build resiliency through this pandemic is by taking care of our physical health and wellness. Ensuring we're maintaining proper nutrition is one way that we can do that. This does not mean I have to change my whole diet. It simply means that if I'm somebody that skips out on lunch, I might put an extra protein bar in my bag before I go to work. Or if my child's somebody that just doesn't eat a lunch, again, I put some sort of nutritional snack or meal replacement in their backpack so that they have something to fuel their body during the day. If you're like most families and we're rushing out the door in the morning and we tend to not have time to make sure that everybody has breakfast, it might be rallying our kids at night and saying, okay, everybody has to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And we put them in a bag and we throw them in the car so that in the morning, as we're not even thinking about breakfast, we get in the car, we're driving to our destination, we can all pull out that sandwich and be able to fuel not only our physical wellness, but our emotional well-being as well. Sleep is another area of physical health that is so important, especially in times of stress. This again does not mean that we are adding 2 extra hours to our bedtime. It's probably very unrealistic to do that. What it does mean is that we're at least adhering to a consistent bedtime and wake time, not only for ourselves as adults, but also for our children. And if you are somebody that's noticing, I do need a little bit more sleep and I'm not getting it, start small. Perhaps that means that I'm starting my children's bedtime routine 10 minutes early so that I can get to bed 10 minutes earlier. Or if your children are older and they're pretty self-sufficient, it means really making that intention for yourself to say, tonight I'm starting to get ready 10 minutes earlier. And for about 2 weeks, just maintain that 10-minute bedtime. And then if it feels helpful, you can bump it back another 5 or 10 minutes and add to it as needed. The last area of physical health is movement. We know that physical movement is nature's antidepressant. Find ways to move, right? Whether it's taking that extra walk around the block during my lunch hour, or I arrive early to my children's school setting to pick them up and they aren't out yet and I'm just going to go for a quick walk around the neighborhood. Integrate your family as well, right? Maybe that means you all go for a walk at night before bedtime. Or turn on some music and dance while you're getting supper ready. 5 minutes a day extra is all we need to just continue to help our body through this stressful time. The final area that I want to touch base on in a way to cultivate resiliency through this pandemic and our return to school is positive thinking. Now, this sounds simple, I know, but unfortunately many of us know it can be really difficult to redirect our attention to what is going well, especially when there's so much that is a struggle right now. But it's really important that we continue to practice and cultivate that positive thinking muscle in our brain. And a few practical tips to be able to do that. One is a gratitude practice. So perhaps you integrate this into your commute home after picking your kids up from school each day. Everybody in the car has to go around and share either one thing they're grateful for or one success from the day. Or individually, one practice that can be helpful is thinking of 3 good things that happened that day and why they were good. Maybe writing in a journal each night those 3 good things. Or as a family, again, finding ways to talk about those good things. Lastly, simply just ruminating on something positive. So often our brain is just rolling with what didn't go well from the day. Really start redirecting your attention to what was something that was pleasant from today. I'm just going to focus on that for 5 minutes and I'm going to allow it to just fill my mind. Or if something didn't go well that day, maybe I want to think about a past memory that was pleasant. Not only does this help build that positive thinking muscle and help us become more resilient, it allows us an opportunity to connect to joy in difficult times. Again, I thank you for listening. I do hope that today's conversation allows you to go home and talk further with your family or your school community and find ways that we can continue to build resiliency during this pandemic. Thank you.